So this morning, something unprecedented happened at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. If you walked past the White House today, you wouldn't see that iconic symbol of American power. Instead, you'd see construction cranes frozen in place, a massive dirt crater where a historic building used to be, and federal marshals posting legal notices on the fence. This is the story of how a $400 million ballroom project just became one of the most embarrassing political disasters in modern presidential history. And trust me, this gets wild. Here's what happened. At 8 a.m. on Monday, January 26, 2026, all construction at the White House came to a complete stop. We're talking about President Trump's controversial Grand Ballroom project, this absolutely massive renovation that was supposed to transform the White House into something rivaling European palaces. But a federal judge just dropped a 40-page order that doesn't just halt the work. It accuses the administration of deception, what he called statutory vandalism, and fiscal negligence. These are serious accusations coming from a Reagan-appointed judge, by the way. The president woke up Monday morning expecting to see progress on his monument. Instead, federal marshals were literally taping cease and desist orders to the construction fence. You can't make this stuff up. The official reason? The money's gone. Vanished. The private donations that were supposed to fund this whole thing have completely evaporated. Let me take you back to late 2025 when this whole saga started. Right after his inauguration, Trump announced what he called the most ambitious White House renovation in history. He said the traditional East Room was too small, too outdated. He apparently called it Third World in a leaked memo to his chief of staff. His solution? The Grand Ballroom. We're talking 90,000 square feet, gold leaf detailing, 30-foot ceilings, even a dedicated victory balcony facing the Treasury Department. The price tag was astronomical, $400 million. But here's the pitch he made to the American public. Taxpayers wouldn't pay a single dime. He claimed that wealthy donors, what he called patriotic billionaires, had already pledged the full amount. He called it a gift to the nation. However, there was a catch. Actually, a massive catch. To build this thing, they needed to demolish the existing East Wing. We're talking about destroying the family theater, dismantling the First Lady's offices, and excavating historic gardens that have been there for decades. Preservation groups went absolutely ballistic. The National Trust for Historic Preservation sued immediately. They argued you can't just tear down historically significant sites because you want a bigger party venue. The White House belongs to all Americans, not just whoever happens to be living there. But the administration found a loophole. In December, the Department of Justice claimed this was a national security matter. They said the new structure would include a state-of-the-art underground bunker to replace the aging Emergency Operations Center. The federal judge overseeing the case, Judge Richard Leon, was skeptical. But faced with the national security card, he allowed the demolition to proceed under very strict conditions. Here's the key part. You can dig the hole, but you cannot pour a single ounce of concrete for the new building until the money is actually in the bank and all permits are approved. Trump gambled. He tore down the East Wing, assuming the money and permits would follow. He was wrong. This is where it gets really interesting. In a sealed court filing dropped Friday night, classic Friday news dump, the administration admitted the funding has completely fallen through. The $400 million was based on what they called non-binding commitments from major donors. Hedge fund managers, real estate moguls, casino tycoons, basically the usual mega-donor crowd. But remember what happened this past week? The Japan bond market crashed. Markets went into chaos. Many of these same donors are now facing what Wall Street calls margin calls. Basically, their portfolios are bleeding money, and they need cash immediately. When the Treasury Department actually called to collect the money for the ballroom fund on Friday, the donors ghosted them. One major donor, reportedly a Las Vegas casino magnate who'd pledged $50 million, formally withdrew his commitment Saturday night. His reason? Market volatility and fiduciary responsibility to shareholders. Translation: this has become too toxic to touch. Judge Leon's ruling this morning was absolutely scathing. Let me read you what he wrote. The executive branch has demolished a historic federal structure on the promise of replacement funds that do not exist. This court will not allow the People's House to be turned into an abandoned construction site fueled by phantom capital and broken promises. He ordered an immediate stop to all work. But here's the part that's sending shockwaves through Washington. He ordered the General Services Administration to provide a plan to restore the site within 30 days. That means if the funding isn't secured, they might have to literally fill in the hole and plant grass where the East Wing used to be. Think about that for a second. The President of the United States might be forced by a federal court to fill in a hole he created, leaving the White House smaller and less functional than when he arrived. That's an unprecedented situation. But it gets worse. Remember how they justified this whole project with national security concerns? That defense just collapsed spectacularly. For months, the White House claimed this ballroom was essential for national security, that the basement would house a new, impenetrable situation room. But in today's hearing, the judge unsealed a classified Secret Service report that the administration tried to keep hidden. Turns out the Secret Service actually opposed this project. Their report stated that the massive construction zone created critical security vulnerabilities. The open pit exposes the foundation to potential drone attacks and surveillance risks. Even more damning, they called the design of the glass-walled ballroom a sniper paradise and a surveillance magnet. These are direct quotes from the Secret Service assessment, so the judge caught them in a lie. They use national security as an excuse to bypass historic preservation laws when in reality, the project actually hurts national security. That's a huge problem legally. Let's talk about what this looks like politically, because optics matter in politics, and these optics are absolutely devastating. President Trump built his brand on being a successful builder, right? I build things ahead of schedule and under budget. I'm going to rebuild America. That was the message. Instead, he's living in what's essentially a construction disaster zone. The view from the presidential residence is literally a mud pit. Piles of dirt, idle machinery, orange safety fencing everywhere. For months, staffers have been reporting that meetings in the Oval Office were constantly interrupted by beeping trucks and pounding machinery. Now it's eerily quiet, but that silence is somehow even worse. It's a monument to failure. Every foreign leader who visits now has to drive past what people are already calling the Trump crater. When the UK Prime Minister visits next month, their motorcade will pass a hole in the ground covered with blue tarps. The contrast with his campaign messaging couldn't be more stark. This project is behind schedule, over budget, unfunded, and now illegal. Sure, the market crash gave donors an excuse to pull out. But there's something deeper going on here. After recent international controversies where the president was openly criticized by world leaders, putting your name on a Trump ballroom became a liability, not a prestige move. Imagine you're the CEO of a major company. Do you really want your name engraved in marble on a ballroom that's being sued by every preservation group in America? Do you want to be associated with an administration that's making headlines for property disputes? The donors also looked at the political landscape. With current polling numbers, there's a real possibility the next president could be from the opposing party. Nobody wants to pay $50 million for a building that might get demolished in 2029. It's just a bad investment. So they use the market crash as a convenient excuse to distance themselves from what's become a toxic project. Democrats are already all over this. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries released a statement minutes after the ruling that was absolutely brutal. He tore down the East Wing. He tore down the economy. He tore down our alliances. Now he stands in the mud of his own making. He is the demolition in chief. It's a powerful metaphor that's going to stick. The East Wing had historical significance. It housed offices for multiple first ladies throughout history. By destroying it for a ballroom and then failing to rebuild it, Trump walked straight into both the barbarian and incompetent stereotypes. Focus groups are apparently saying things like, why is he building a $400 million ballroom when gas is over $6 a gallon? The contrast between luxury obsession and economic struggles couldn't be clearer. Even Republican senators are quietly furious. They have to go on TV and defend why the White House looks like a strip mine. Senator Mitt Romney was quoted saying, "This is what happens when you govern by whim, not by law." The judge gave them 30 days. Find $400 million in verified funds or fill in the hole. Can Trump find the money? Maybe, but the options are all bad. He could try to divert military funds like he did with the border wall, but the judge anticipated that. The order specifically bars using appropriated government funds without congressional approval. And Congress isn't giving him anything right now. He could try to get a foreign government to pay for it. Imagine the Saudi ballroom. But that would be an instant scandal. A foreign power paying for a White House addition would violate the Emoluments Clause and could trigger impeachment proceedings immediately. The most likely scenario is the most humiliating one. The GSA hires contractors to pour dirt back into the hole, plant grass, and restore the exterior wall. The Trump ballroom becomes a ghost, something that was promised but never materialized. Let's not forget what was actually destroyed here. The East Wing wasn't just offices. It was built during World War II under FDR. It stood for over 80 years. It housed the First Lady's staff, the engine of White House soft power and diplomacy. By tearing it down without a real plan, the administration severed the social arm of the presidency. Reports suggest the current First Lady's staff is now working out of spare rooms in a building across the street, separated from the main residence. The National Trust for Historic Preservation doesn't usually sue sitting presidents. For them to take legal action shows how unprecedented and destructive they viewed this project. Here's a detail most media missed. The construction crews were union workers, laborers, crane operators, cement pourers. When the financial crisis hit Friday, the unions demanded payment guarantees. They know Trump's history with contractors from his business career. The contractor couldn't provide those assurances because the donor money had frozen. So the unions walked off the job before the judge even issued his order. The court just formalized what the labor market already decided. Trump, who campaigned on being pro-worker, lost the support of the actual workers on his own project. That's politically significant. There's a potentially explosive legal issue buried in this story. If the administration submitted sworn statements to the court claiming the money was secured when it was actually just promised, that could be perjury. The judge has ordered the White House to produce all donor commitments by Wednesday. He wants names, signatures, everything. If those documents show the money was never truly there, someone could face criminal charges, not necessarily the president himself, but potentially the GSA administrator or campaign finance officials. This could transform from a construction dispute into a criminal fraud investigation. This ballroom disaster is really a perfect metaphor for larger issues. It started with a promise that sounded too good to be true. It proceeded without proper planning or genuine financial backing. It destroyed something valuable that can't be replaced. And now it's left an ugly mess that everyone has to deal with. The structure being built without a foundation, literally and figuratively, mirrors concerns people have about rushed decision-making and inadequate planning. Whether you support this administration or oppose it, I think we can all agree that the White House deserves better than to look like an abandoned construction site. We'll be watching the next 30 days very closely. If the GSA issues what they're calling a remediation contract, basically an order to fill in the hole, that will be one of the most symbolically devastating moments in presidential history. A president who built his reputation on construction and development, forced by a court to fill in a hole at the White House. You literally can't script it better than that. This story has everything: legal drama, political consequences, historical destruction, financial collapse, and construction workers walking off the job. It's going to be taught in political science classes for decades. What do you think? Should they fill in the hole and restore the grounds? Should they find the money somehow and complete the project? Let me know in the comments below. If you want to stay updated on this developing story, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. This situation is evolving rapidly, and we'll keep you informed as new developments break. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.